Just grow wild. Just grow wild.
But many people don't buy broccoli for the flowers.
At the moment, I have some in my outside the greenhouse, and it's doing very well. The seeds came from America. A friend of mine brought a few seeds, and I've forgotten the name of it now, but it does very well here in Jamaica at this time of the year.
Wonderful.
Kedan, you're also a farmer?
Sorry, say again?
No, I was asking Kedan if he's also a farmer.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay. What crops do you grow?
Right now I have house planting, pumpkin, doing some carrot shortly, and tomato.
Okay, outdoors.
Right.
Oh, okay.
I'm interested in the greenhouse farming, that's why I'm on.
Great to have you.
I assume in a little while there'll be a question and answer period in this program.
If you have questions now, while we wait for the other participants, I'm glad to talk about production. What questions do you have?
Well, it's a delicate question about the tobacco or the tomato mosaic virus, which we have been suffering from since last year. I don't think we've quite got to the bottom of how it happened or how we can prevent it happening again in the future. We haven't got to the bottom of that yet. So I don't know if you can shed any light on this particular subject for us.
It has been a long time since I have worked with viruses of plants, but I know that tobacco mosaic virus is a very difficult one to work with. It can get on your hands, and then by touching other susceptible plants, you can transmit it through your hands.
Yes.
Some greenhouses will not let people who smoke anywhere close to it because they can get the virus on their hands and transmit it from the tobacco through their hands into the new crop. There are not many treatments for it. The best would be to identify the plants that are having it and are able to give it to their neighbors to just rogue them out. And then very carefully wash your hands so that you don't transmit it to healthy plants again.
Okay. And how did it get there in the first place, do you think?
I don't think it is coming in on seeds, but it could have come from a transplant. Or it was on someone's hands from outside, and then they brought it into the greenhouse without knowing they had it.
Okay.
I work with some viruses that are similar in potatoes, where if you get it on the shovel from one plant, you can give it to the next several plants that you touch until it finally wipes off of the tool.
Correct. Bacteria, so it spread.
Yes, it can pass planting material also. If you don't have clean planting material, then you will end up with virus.
And I don't remember how stable it is on plastic or metal, or how sometimes you just have to wash everything in the greenhouse very carefully to make sure you are controlling any of those surface viruses.
Sanitation. All right, Jeff, I think we're at a junction now where we want to begin.
Okay.
Right. So again, quickly, just welcome everyone to session 2 of these good agriculture practices in greenhouse production. I'm sorry for the delay in the starting, and I'm going to hand over to Jeff. Today's format will be presentation and then questions and answer based on each presentation. So there will be 3 presentations today. The first one will be, 1 second, let me just, right. So we'll be looking at the simplest, most basic type of greenhouse setup that there is that we're being introduced to. For those who were not on last week, which I'm noticing a few new persons, Dr. Jeffrey Smink, he's based in Alaska, and he's a greenhouse expert. So he's gonna tell us something about how they are able to set up very inexpensive greenhouses. For those of you among us who are going in for the first time, which from last week's session, he was encouraging persons, get to know the greenhouse by starting maybe a small one, and then you can build from there. So that will be the first presentation. And then the other presentation will be, just as you said, Mr. Clark, overall strategies to deal with pest identification, which we are aware is a major challenge, excuse me, for greenhouse growers. And then the third presentation will be on treatment strategies, which incidentally we started discussing just now. So over to you, Jeff, for the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Last week when we were talking about greenhouses or shade houses, there were a number of questions about the very small shade houses that I was talking about. So I put together some photographs of a class that we have here in Alaska where we build these small shade houses or greenhouses. Here's the picture where we built one in the community, and you can see the guys leaning over. The entire greenhouse is in that box. So it is a very small box for shipping. We're able to put it onto the airplane and fly it into remote locations, but the greenhouse fits in that cardboard box. So here I have 10 students or so in the class, and we're putting all the pipes together to create the kit. We've learned that we don't follow the instructions of the kit because sometimes it's easier to build it on the ground and then raise it into the air afterwards. But here we've put one of the walls up, and here the students just pick up the other side of the house, and while they hold it in the air, someone will slip the pipes in for the other side of the greenhouse. What makes the greenhouse so strong is we have added boards across the bottom. So where the greenhouse is normally, the kit is just the pipes and the covering, we have added 2x6 boards on the bottom to give it so much more strength. In our case, we have a lot of snow. Certain areas have very strong winds, so we have to make the kit stronger than the kit comes to us. So we just bolt the kit onto the boards to give it extra strength. Buying a 20-foot board is very expensive, so we just take 2 shorter boards and connect them together and make a butt joint. That's the carpenter's term for that overlap. And that is plenty strong, and it allows us to use less expensive lumber. In fact, in some communities where we can't get lumber, they just cut down trees and bolt the tree to the base of it. It's not hard to find a 20-foot small tree. And then we just cut the extra off so that it squares up the house. It's these cables that we add inside the house that give it so much more strength. In construction, you always work with triangles because the triangle is a stronger shape than a square. So by adding these cables in 2 triangles, we make this house very, very strong and able to stand up to the snow and the wind quite well. Because we will attach plastic onto the house, we screw wood onto it because it's easier to nail or screw into the wood than it is to the plastic. So we just put some wood along the edges of the certain parts of the house. So here we've made a back wall, and at the peak of the house, that will be a vent to let the warm air out of the house. That's why it is framed up so funny. And there you can see the cables going across in the house to make it extra strength. Here they're putting the plastic on the back wall. We had a local store donated the door to us, but otherwise that would the door in this case would be about $100. So here we're building the front wall. There, the whole wall is completed in the back. The house had a bit of a slope, so we had to make little legs to level the house out. The site that they gave us was a very poor site to work with, so we had to adjust the house to work on the site that was not as good as it should be. Because plastic rips very easily, we don't just nail to the plastic, we actually pinch the plastic between 2 pieces of wood. That spreads the load out so it doesn't rip the plastic as quickly. And then because we have so much wind, we just staple the loose ends down so that they don't flap in the wind. It's a little bit where you have to take some time around the ends of the walls to get the edges clipped in so that the wind does not hurt it. And then I had to leave my class because the airplane flew me out. So here is a completed greenhouse that we made out in rural Alaska. And you can see here in the picture, they didn't use a fancy door. They just took a piece of plywood and cut a pretty shape into it. So rather than a store-bought door, they just made a nice door out of plywood. They're planting potatoes in the bottom picture and outside of the high tunnel. So they have done very well with this high tunnel in remote Alaska. So here are the costs that I converted to Jamaican dollars. The kit for us is $500. The lumber for the bases would be an extra $200. The door, if they had not given it to us, the door would have been $100. The cables, nuts, bolts, and other parts are another $100 for us. And enough plastic to do 2 high tunnels was $100. So for American dollars, we were $1,000 for that 10 by 20 high tunnel. And I understand in Jamaica dollars, it'd be $150,000 for this greenhouse. So are there any questions about making this inexpensive greenhouse?
I guess the question would be, if we were to get it here, how much would it cost to land it here? But
the box is about 150 pounds. No, around 150 pounds. So I don't know what the freight would be for that.
okay, 150 pounds in weight?
About that, yes.
Okay.
And I went to the website. The cost of the high tunnel, when it is not on sale, is $500. For us, it goes on sale and it will be about $350 when it's on sale.
Okay.
I think I think, Jeff, that some of the greenhouse farmers here, they would be they're very impressed to see that you're able to grow without the mesh, because here in Jamaica, that plastic covering, oh gosh, it would be a heat house. Yeah, yeah, that would definitely be a heat house in their eyes. So what Jeff was showing is not necessarily how to build it here. He's basically showing that in Alaska, where it's very cold, that is what they have. They one of the kits that
And
they
we have a
use.
lot of wind here.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
Thank you for pointing that out. If I was to make it in Jamaica, rather than using plastic, I would use shade cloth.
yes,
Mm.
yes.
What is a shade? One called shade cloth.
The saran mesh around the edge.
Right.
But
And
the
Or
photographs that I had seen, the roof of the high tunnels that you have are still covered with plastic.
yes,
So that
yes,
means they have to be irrigated inside because there's no rain from them.
correct.
So that there are some similarities, but yes, because it is so much warmer, you want to cool the house down where we want to warm the house up.
yeah.
1,000.
Good point.
And then the end wall of that one high tunnel, that was the point of that vent. It's way up high in the high tunnel. And since heat rises by opening up that vent and the front door, you get quite a good air circulation, which for us is enough to keep the temperature down. Because when we have a good sunny day, it may be 60 degrees, convert to Celsius, about 18 or so, 19 degrees. Within the high tunnel, it will be just about 40 degrees. So we have to be very careful with ventilation also. So in the summertime, our greenhouses have to have strong ventilation to get that heat out also.
Good information, Jeff. Right.
Yes,
So it's just the idea, everybody should get that it is possible to start a smaller greenhouse using, maybe not the exact one, but and especially for persons doing their own seedlings as well, this should come interesting to those persons as well. So it's a model, and then we can always retrofit it to our Jamaican situation.
And there are plans on the internet for making it out of PVC piping. So there are many different kinds of structures, and then each location puts the appropriate covering on it.
Good.
Shade cloth, netting to keep insects out. When I travel in Florida, sometimes birds are a problem. So they will have very large mesh just to keep the birds out of the high tunnels. It is almost 1 inch between fabric. So it's very large mesh, but it's enough to keep the birds out.
Okay. All right.
Any other questions on small high tunnels for now?
Mr. Parks, your hand was up.
think
I don't know if
I think it
yeah,
I think it would be a good idea for beginners to start off with a small greenhouse until they become proficient, and they can expand and become commercial.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. That is a very good point. In the greenhouse that I did in remote Alaska, that last picture, that's exactly what they did. They built this small high tunnel to learn how to do it. The following year, they built a commercial 30-foot by 100-foot to feed the community. But they wanted to learn in this small one and convince themselves that growing their own vegetables was going to work for this community. So it was a wonderful way to step into it, make your mistakes on a small scale, and then make a well-informed decision to make the investment to get the much bigger house. So that is a very good strategy for someone trying to see if that's some business opportunity they want to follow.
Great. Mr. Hubert? Hubert, you had a question? Mr. Parks, your hand is up? I think he's having difficulty hearing us.
Yeah, his audio is not connected.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Miss Marcia, you had a question, darling?
Oh, the start, start. What you call it? The material something what they use on the top, we call it something on the top, but how it look? We never see that before.
Or she want to look at the top, Jill? The material at the top?
The previous slide, or
Yeah, the previous slide.
this was that little high tunnel built into the community that had no roads to it. So we had to bring the parts in on an airplane for this community also.
She was asking about the top. She was saying she hadn't seen anything like that before. You mean the plastic? It's plastic in Alaska because it's cold. So they have plastic on top. That's what you're talking about?
No, we have plastic on top, but we never see anything like
Oh, just the
around.
design. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the same like what we
The
use.
door and all of that.
The UV plastic.
Yeah.
There it is.
I showed them some of the pictures of how your greenhouse would look, how it is for you. So he knows the difference.
The photographs that I've seen are steel structures with plastic on the top, a big roof vent to get the heat out, and then the sides are mesh to keep insects out, but allow it to not get so hot.
Yeah.
Okay.
How big is that one?
20 foot long and 10 foot wide.
So I'm gonna see me slug. So I'm gonna see we. Oh,
You
she
not
go
gonna
to see
see
we.
you.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, we are seeing you though.
Okay.
Now,
Oh yes.
yeah, you're in the field today?
Yes, we
at
are.
here, at the farm.
Oh, good. So, possibly you could show us what's going on if you turn
Yes,
around
let
the
it
camera.
Oh, let me go and turn on. This is one house we research. Hold on. Camera turn. You see anything?
Yes, we saw it a while ago, but it came back around. So put
Oh,
it
turn
back.
it back. Sorry.
That's it.
Oh,
Are you can you
Yes.
right. Okay.
Nice. Thank you.
Maybe
Hmm?
for Bobby.
put the camera higher. Turn it higher. Right. Higher.
I say you want to
Hey, that's it.
want,
See another one over there.
do you want to like get clean up?
Going.
Are you want we go inside?
Somebody else showing theirs as well. Yeah, but you get the general idea, Jeff. This is what.
Yes, thank you very much for showing those.
So this is a tomato house.
Yes. Why
This
the
is a
farmer is
tomato house.
inside.
Are you seeing it?
Yes.
Yes, it's in it. Looking good.
Yes, it's a tomato house. So we have 3 rows, 3 beds.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank
How
you. Doing some trellising.
Yes.
Yes.
and how old are those tomato plants?
These look about 4 weeks. Yeah, more than 4 weeks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
Miss Galaxy, you were showing yours as well.
She do it gone.
Oh, that's more.
Miss White Blouse and Black Jacket.
Oh, Jeff, you would have to stop sharing your screen.
Okay. Can you see I'm showing
Yes.
a house that newly
Done.
cleaned out, getting ready for planting.
Yes.
Can you see?
Right. Camera different. Camera.
You have
So
to turn it how you had it before.
Okay. So you can put on this.
I think her picture froze.
Not seeing
All right, Jeff, I think we can move on.
Okay.
Thank you guys for those demonstrations.
Okay, you're welcome.
okay.
At least you get
Thank
a
you.
literal feel of what a greenhouse kind of looks like, Jeff, because those represent almost what most greenhouses will look like, more or less.
So once we have a beautiful high tunnel and something starts giving us problems, then it is time to become a detective. When you have the problems showing up in the plants, how do you sort out what is the problem? Do you have enough water? Do you have enough nutrients? Are insects eating it, or are there diseases affecting it? How do you sort out what the problem is? Well, water is usually fairly easy to sort out. Usually it's not a problem that you don't understand. The plants are starting to wilt if they don't have enough water. So that usually tells you, track down where the problem is in the irrigation. Why is some part of it not getting water? Is something clogged? Is there a plug? Is something broken? The alternative is a certain area getting too much water? Is something overwatering, or do you have a problem with water draining? And sometimes the sign of that is the crop can become yellow. The yellowing is from a nitrogen deficiency because the roots are not able to take up enough nitrogen when there's too much standing water in an area. And also check the roots, because sometimes they will smell horrible if there is a root problem with too much water.
Oh, yes.
And then the next, if you rule out that it is not a water issue, how about nutrients? The nice thing about nutrients is usually the entire bed will show the symptoms. So everything will be yellowing, everything will be purpling. It's usually the whole bed shows the symptoms.
Yes, yes.
And then once you see symptoms, you check the references to see what deficiency symptoms look like in your crop.
Okay.
Many times there are colors or patterns on the leaf that are associated with nutrient deficiencies. and where the deficiency occurs is many times related to, is it a mobile nutrient or a non-mobile nutrient? And that means certain nutrients have the ability to move inside the plant and others do not move inside the plant. So if you have a mobile nutrient like nitrogen, the deficiencies show on the bottom tissues, the older tissues, because the nitrogen has left those older leaves and has moved to the young new leaves. So that in nitrogen deficiency, the young tissue is nice and green and the old tissue is yellow because the old tissues don't have enough nitrogen. In other, something like potassium that is not going to move as much in the plant, there the young tissue is deficient and the old tissue has the potassium. So sometimes where the color is in the plant is a big hint to what the problem is going to be. And ultimately, when the crop is high value, soil test or tissue test to narrow down what the problem is. So here's a picture of corn, and you can see the internet has many different examples of nutrient deficiencies. The top leaf is nice, green, healthy. The next leaf down has purple, which is an indicator that you have phosphorus deficient. The third leaf down has yellow on the outside of the leaves and green center. That's potassium deficiency. And the bottom of the leaves are yellow on the center and green on the outsides. That's nitrogen deficiency. So where the crop is showing the problems is a big hint to which nutrient problem is giving you the bad, giving you the problem. And you can see in the bottom, there are many different names for what's going on. You can have the purple where the leaf joins the space between the veins. Chlorosis just means yellow. So if it's between the veins, that's called intervein chlorosis, yellowing. Or if it's the vein itself, then it will say chlorosis of the veins. So where it is on the leaf many times is a big hint to what the problem is. If you have chewing, that's much more easy because you actually see holes in the leaf. So is the insect damage, or in this case, the picture has a snail. Snail makes nice big holes in the leaves. So sometimes if it's a transplant, the entire plant will be chewed off and it will be laying on its side because it's chewed through the stem. Other insects will chew the roots. So if you see chewing damage, you almost always know that it's going to be an insect or a slug problem.
Right.
But insects can also cause other damage that doesn't leave teeth marks. The many insects work by piercing, sucking. So basically, they are the vampires of the plant world. They're sticking their needle into the plant and sucking the juices out. So if you only have a few of them, the plant doesn't even notice. But when you have hundreds and hundreds of them, then by having all of that sap pulled out, the plant is going to be weakened just because it's losing so much of its plant blood.
Yes.
And a number of these insects can also transmit viruses while they're pulling out the plant blood. As you look at the root system, what do the roots look like? Nematodes are really, really, really tiny little worms, and they go after the plants. So certain ones will cause those bumps on the roots. They're called galls, or other ones would be a cyst. And that's where the plant has enlarged, and that stops the flow of nutrients up and down the root system. Other nematodes will just cause the roots to react like the lesions on the bottom picture. The root is responding to the injury and it's making so many, basically a scab for the plant, that it's not allowing the transmission of the nutrients properly. So here you have so many little animals that are sucking juices out of the plant roots. That's why the plant is doing poorly. It's just being bled to death underground. So you can have root damage, the plant is weak, and there are certain of these nematodes that can also make bacterial problems or virus problems much more of an issue. So when you try to narrow down what's going on, take a look at the roots. Are they looking healthy? Diseases. Do you have a fungus on it? In the upper right-hand corner, you can see early blight, which is going to leave big lesions on the plant leaf. Bacteria can cause plant diseases. The far left, that's potato scab on potatoes. That's one that, as a potato grower, I'm constantly battling. It is a major problem for me out in the field. And on the bottom left, on the bottom right-hand picture, you can see this, the speckling from tobacco mosaic virus. So the plant diseases are viruses, bacteria, and fungi. They're the most common diseases. So when you walk out to the high tunnel or the shade house, do you see something that's doing the damage? Can you see an insect chewing on it? Can you see a lesion on the leaf or on the stem? We're trying to figure out what's making your production go down. Do you see something doing the damage? Second question, is there a pattern to the damage? Does the damage cover the red zone of the entire shade house, or is it just a certain area of the shade house? Those are big differences. If everything in the shade house is being impacted, that may be a nutrition issue. But if you only have certain small areas, that's many times something in the roots or an insect that has not yet begun to spread around. And then, of course, does this pattern agree with anything that you can think of? Is the pattern right by the door? Is that where you see the most of the infection? Did somebody bring in an insect on their clothing as they came in? Does the pattern follow the irrigation? That long red one on the bottom goes right down the row. Something's associated with a row in this case. Does the pattern that you see in the greenhouse look like something that you fertilize? Does it go down the road? Is there more at the beginning of the row than at the end? You're basically looking, can you think of anything in the pattern of problems that agrees with something that you can think of? I have many times where someone will have a bad batch of transplants, and every place they put those transplants into the high tunnel or the greenhouse, they have trouble. So if it went in 3 different greenhouses, but it's all the same batch of transplants, then we can narrow down, oh, we know where the problem is. Something was wrong with that soil for the transplants, and everywhere they are planted, they do poorly. And is the pattern of damage spreading? And is that spread going down the row, or does it cross the row? And of course, is it going from one house to the other? So in this case, in the blue center, 2 weeks ago, you saw the area in the center of that circle, the blue one. The next week, you came out and it's the yellow circle. Last week, it was the orange circle, and now the whole red circle is the area that's becoming infected. Well, you can see it's crossing rows. So it's probably something alive that is moving around. So it's either a disease that is being spread across the rows, or it's an insect, because a nutrient problem won't cross from one row to the next the same way. It's not alive, it can't move. And of course, if you see it going from one house to another house, then you're pretty sure it's not a nutrient problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all,
Yeah.
you have to become a detective. Once you see the problem, then you have to make some decisions. Is the damage going to impact the amount of sellable product? And if the damage is going to, how much is it going to cost you? So now you have to do some economics. It's called the economic threshold. Do you live with the damage, or do you spend the money to treat the problem? Sometimes I have people ask me, you know, it's going to cost me $10,000 to fix the problem, and they'll only make $5,000 of sales. So I said, you're better off to just lose the $5,000 than you are to spend more money than it's going to cost you to fix the problem. So you always have to make that decision. Is it worth it for me to put the money into fixing the problem, or is it less expensive for me to just live with the problem and not be able to sell quite as much? So for every problem that you face, nutrients or insects or diseases, you always have to make that decision. Is it going to cost me more to fix the problem than I'm going to save money by not fixing it? And then you have to confirm that what you think is causing the problem is actually causing the problem. So I say, don't spend money fixing a problem that you don't have. So the reason I have the picture of the bear in the field is, in my potato field, I had a lot of damage from those big brown bears. But I know that bears don't eat potatoes. So why do I have so much damage from the bears? Is the bear the problem? No, it ended up in the far right-hand corner. There's a little vole or a mouse animal, and that mouse likes to eat my potatoes. The bear is hunting for the mice. So when I saw all kinds of bear tracks and bear damage, they weren't the problem. They were trying to eat the problem. So you have to be the detective and figure out, is the insect that you found truly the problem, or is it something that's not related at all to your problem? So is the insect that you found on the plant causing the problem? Does it just happen to be passing through the area when you went looking for it? Or is this the hunter who's going to be eating the problem? The same for the fungus. Is the fungus that you find on a leaf causing the problem? Or is the fungus just decomposing the leaf tissue that the real problem has caused? So where do you go to find out who is the problem and who are the disease problems? For me, we can work with the agriculture extension people. We can talk to the agricultural university people. There are consultants or industries that will help. They want to sell you product, so they will help to look at your insect and help to identify what the insect is. We have the internet to show pictures of insects and try to help you figure out what they are. There are guidebooks that show pictures of insects and pictures of diseases. And for those of you who are growing a lot of the same plant, the fancy book name is a crop monograph. And that is it's the book of all known diseases and problems of tomatoes or potatoes. It just shows all of the problems of each of the crops by nutrient deficiency, by diseases, and the insects that eat them. So it's nice if somebody has access to those crop monographs so you can look at the pictures and see if they match the problem that you see. So that's what I had for today. This is what my farm, this is very near my farm, so you can see how much snow we have, and I really would love to see another picture of the coconut palm that I saw last weekend, or last class. So what else questions do you have?
I know the questions are coming, Jeff, but I really appreciate the way, as you mentioned, to become a detective and to troubleshoot some of the problems, because as you mentioned, if you realize that the condition in the greenhouse is spreading, then you know that that cannot be a nutrition problem, because nutrition only affect one area, one specific area. If it starts one side and then you see it going over to the other side slowly, you know, that's not nutrition. So you have to start thinking pests. And those are some good points. I would appreciate if you just go back through to the picture there that you have with the different ways you can diagnose the problem.
That one?
Yes, forward now.
So these are the nutrient deficiencies and these are the insects. Is that the picture you were looking for?
No, no, go forward. It had it when you had the circles.
Oh, thank you. So here it's spreading and you can see that it's crossing the rows. So that is usually a very strong indication that it's not nutrition. Nutrition has to go down the rows because the water or the way the people have fertilized. So here you know it's something is alive if it's able to cross through the footpath between the rows.
Thanks. Um, thanks very much, Sir Jeff.
You're welcome.
I know this would help to, you know, open the discussion in terms of some of the things that we see happening on the farm, and some of the things that we are like wondering, say, how, what is this, or how is this happening, or how can this happen, right? So Jeff is inviting persons to any
And
comment that you want, any question um, you can make it now.
many times we see the problem right by the door. And that is usually an indication that somebody has brought something in on their clothing. Or it goes down the entire row, and it could be that somebody ran out of fertilizer or there's a watering issue. When you see the whole pattern go down the individual row, that's frequently a nutrient or a watering issue. But if it's if it's a patch, then many times insects or diseases. And if you wait long enough, the entire house can be affected, but that's where the detective comes in. Did it start someplace and move, or was it through the whole house all the time?
I think, Jeff, when the first slide that you had shared with us, can you bring it up again? I think it's for us to identify what is the cause. I think you had disease or the very first slide. Right.
Do you have enough water, enough nutrients? Do you see an insect eating it? Or is there a disease going after it? Once you narrow those down, that helps what kind of detective to be.
Right, I think everybody, including myself, I'm gonna write these down. Each day, it should be like a daily checklist. You know, when for us, we in Jamaica, we have a colloquial expression, and we say when doctor run ward, what it really means is whenever the doctor is in the hospital setting, these are the things that he checks for each patient. So it would be good if everybody either write it down, take a picture of it or something, but this should be part of your daily checks of your greenhouses. Enough water, is the plant getting enough water? All of those that are there. This is very good, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
J7 Neil. Okay, so now it's question and answer, guys. You don't have to raise your hand. You can go ahead and ask your question. It's an open session. Go ahead, J7. He's not ready. All right, in the meantime, Mr. Smith, could you pose your question? All right, so Mr. Smith is asking what is pattern indicating temperature issues? What are, all right, I think he's like what issues indicate that this issue has to do with the temperature within the greenhouse? That's what he's asking.
When it gets very cold, like Alaska does, we will have damage from frost near the edges of the plant, near the edges of the greenhouse. So for us, temperature is from the outside of the wall of the greenhouse is the coldest, moving to the center of the house, which is the warmest. From everything I have read, Jamaica does not have to worry about freezing temperatures in the greenhouse. So you can have heat stress in the high tunnel or in the shade house, possibly not enough air movement to carry fresh air under the under the plastic roof of the house. So what I tell almost everybody, does your shade house have a thermometer in it? For us, that is a very important tool to managing the greenhouse is what's the temperature in the air or in where the crop has. So there's a very strong gradient. Our temperatures are many times cool 1 foot above the ground and then very warm 10 foot above the ground where it's trapped by the plastic. But when I saw the photographs of your greenhouses, they have big vents in the roof. So you should not get as hot as our greenhouses do. But many times an inexpensive thermometer held in the greenhouse out of the sunlight, put it in a little bit of shade so you're not getting the sun on the thermometer, is just a good working tool to know how hot it is. Because yes, you can get too hot for plants. Then you have to figure out, how do I get more air movement to cool the plants down? So what is the pattern to it? Usually the entire house is going into heat stress rather than one small area. Is that did I answer the question correctly or did I totally miss the point?
Mr. Smith?
Yes, I think you covered what I wanted to find out in terms of temperature and the greenhouse and what kind of pattern would you find for damages, right? So I think you answered what I wanted to find out.
When you have trellis tomatoes, if they are 2 meters tall, sometimes you will see temperature damage way on the top and no injury way on the bottom because the top of the plant may be 30 or 40 degrees in Celsius, 20 degrees warmer than the bottom of the plant. So sometimes you will see the heat damage on the same plant in different parts of it. Are there other questions?
Everybody's quiet today, I don't know.
Yes.
It's a bit chilly.
Oh, it's me. I'm back again.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead,
Clark.
Mr. Clark.
How much should we take note of the type of seeds that we buy and plant in our greenhouse here in Jamaica, because there are some of the same species like tomato and sweet pepper. There are some that can withstand high temperature and some that can't, of the same breed. Like for instance, I was looking through a catalog and it tells you the temperature in Europe that that particular plant is good to grow it in Europe, whereas in the Caribbean now it's a different story. Understand what I mean? How much should we take interest on the temperature of the tolerance of the plant?
A lot. You have to know how to change the scale that is appropriate for Europe into what works for the Caribbean. But what you usually see is a plant that is adapted to warmer temperature will do better in your warm season, and a plant that is adapted to a cooler season will do better in your cooler season. They're never, not even perfect. In our case, they're not even close, because when Alaska gets warm is the summertime and it doesn't get night. So we are warm for possibly a week without stopping. And that's very different from the Europe or the Caribbean, where it will be warm in the daytime but then cool off in the evening. So we still look at those charts to say, is this broccoli adapted to warm weather or cool weather? But we know that we cannot use those charts perfectly. And in our case, our farmers are constantly trying different varieties to see which one is best adapted for the growing conditions that they have. Almost all of the farmers that I work with will always have a little corner here or there trying out a new variety that they saw the pretty picture in the catalog or their friend has spoken highly of, and they will see, will it work for their system? So to me, that's the best way, is to give it a try on a small scale before you go big. So to me, those temperature adapted in the catalogs is a guide, but not perfect, because you don't live in that area. Did I address the question that you had, or did I miss it again?
No, you addressed it very well. And if I may share at this point an experience that I had 2-3 years ago, I took a visit to the UK and I went to the supermarket and I saw some huge sweet pepper. So I thought I would save the seeds and sneak it back into Jamaica and planted it. I planted it in my greenhouse and I was so excited about this, the rate of which this thing was growing. It was lush and it was growing faster than any other variety. And I think the plant forgot to bear fruit. It was so busy growing that it forgot to bear fruit. It went into what we call a vegetative mode.
Mr. Clark has pointed out something very important. The seed of the crop may not grow the best crop itself. Plant breeders are always working to make the seed that they sell you to be the best production, but the offspring from those seed may not be a good producer at all. That is very, very common with hybrid seeds. If you look at if you walk through the field and see the parent of the material that makes hybrid seed, you would never grow it, because in the case of corn, the mother parent and the father parent are both very small, sickly plants. But when you take the genetics from the mother and the genetics from the father, the offspring that is what you buy as seed to plant, they can be amazingly powerful plants. But when you plant the seed that comes from that amazing, powerful plant, you are not getting the same combination of the mother and father that made them. So when you plant a seed that you have grown yourself, it is a big gamble. I like to gamble, so I do it, but you have to recognize it is a gamble.
Oh, but
Just to add, Jeff, that I think we have to commend our input suppliers here. They have done a very good job at exposing farmers to various varieties of especially tomatoes and sweet peppers. So for the most part, you know, the varieties, that I've noticed, they perform well, but sometimes you realize over time, the yield diminishes. So it's always something that farmers are, you know, stay alert to. Is there a better variety? Is there a variety that I can reap from longer? But you know, because of the difficulty with importing seeds, you know, we have to buy from the local suppliers. We can't encourage what Mr. Clark tried. But on the market here in Jamaica, which you would not know, yeah, we have fairly good varieties. Back to you, Mr. Clark.
You notice I use the word sneak in. it was many.
You did buy the pepper, so you owned it, right? Right.
Sorry, say again.
No, so you did buy that pepper, so you owned it.
Yeah, I did.
It's just the quantities. I think it's the quantities below a certain amount. I don't think there is
only a few, because I just wanted
restrictions.
to see how well it would do in the Caribbean, in Jamaica.
Right. But seed selection, though, which we're discussing now, is very important. If you plant in open field versus within a greenhouse, seed selection is very important. And your seed cost is, no matter you go into a seed store and you see, most times your seed cost will not be more than 5% of your overall cost of production. So don't go cheap on seeds, guys, and think that you can cheat the system. Most times when the seeds are more expensive, it's because there's a certain type of engineering that has gone to produce those seeds to be more resistant to certain diseases and more tolerant. We're talking about temperatures and those kind of things. So guys, when you go, try not to just go for the cheapest seed. Many times the more expensive seeds are more expensive because there's a certain engineering that has gone into producing those seeds.
You are so correct. You are so 100% correct, because over the years I've discovered that the more expensive seeds like early sensation and the more expensive ones, $34,000 a thousand, they give a very, very good yield, with opposed to the cheap variety, California Wonder and all that type of thing. It's so you're so correct, and it is false economy, I believe, too, like you said, to go for cheap seeds, because the same amount of effort that you have to put in to grow the cheap seed is the same amount of effort for the expensive seed. But on an expensive seed, you get a much better return.
True. In my experience as a farmer, I have planted Revelation, which is really meant for greenhouses. I planted it outdoors, and I was able to reap from those peppers for, I think, up to a year. I mean, over time, the yield dwindled, but I had those peppers up, running, treating, and reaping from them. So they were very expensive, and I thought twice about buying them. But in terms of the returns that I got, it really more than paid for itself. Really more than paid for itself. So me personally, I just believe that, you know, give the farmers the best possible chance of succeeding, you know, but then there are farmers and there are farmers. You still have to have seeds that the regular farmer who has had hard times, just want to go start, he must be able to afford as well. Right, so that's what I had to share about the seed situation here in Jamaica, Jeff.
As Mr. Clark said, it's the same amount of work. So using good seed usually gives you a better reward on the same amount of work than you would get using seed that is not good quality. And many times the price is an indicator of the quality.
True, true.
I love early sensation because a lot of the times, apart from the time when I suffer the mosaic virus, it produced almost to the near the top of the greenhouse, the same size that it started out at the bottom. And I think that's down to do with watering and nutrient program. We think because we have picked the first few at the bottom, then we ease off on the nutrients. No, I don't think so. I think you after that it's time to step up the nutrient program.
And
maybe Jeff can touch on that.
That is important for every crop because each crop works a little bit differently. With certain varieties of tomatoes, if you do not lower the amount of nitrogen that you are applying, you will have nothing but vegetative growth and very little tomatoes. So each of the varieties, you have to learn how that behaves. Just like a car and a truck drive differently, you're trying to learn how each of the varieties drive, what works best for them.
True, true, true. I don't know if Mr. McPherson, he had said he would join. Is Mr. McPherson online? He's a greenhouse expert. I'm not sure he's on. But I think here too, Jeff, we have like two determinate and indeterminate varieties. I don't know if you could explain the difference.
Determinate variety, the plant is trying to synchronize that all of the flowers will come out at once and all of the tomatoes will start to ripen at the same time. So a determinate variety is great for a one-time harvest that you go into the greenhouse, the shade house, and you pick all the tomatoes off the plant, and then you can go out and sell them all and transition the greenhouse to something else. An indeterminate variety is constantly putting out new flowers. So that would be wonderful for taking to the farmer's market. Every week you will have some tomatoes and the crop is never really throwing everything out at one time. So do you want to be slow and steady, or do you want to be all at once? That's the decision between the determinate and the indeterminate types. And sometimes it's the same amount of tomatoes. It's just when do they grow and ripen?
You look like you don't understand.
Okay. Thank you for that excellent response, Jeff. Shelly V, you had a question?
No, I don't. I actually just got on because I got a new link.
Okay,
I'm having a little challenge.
Right, so are there any other questions relating to pests and diseases in general, monitoring, some issues that you're seeing?
I have a question for everybody. Who are the resources that you can go to when you do see an insect that you're not sure who it is or a disease? What are the local resources that are available to the Jamaica growers?
Anybody answering?
The resources are from the distributors, as well as the Bottles Research Station. Their team there that deals with entomology and virology. The team at Bottles does, and they are quite efficient that when you call them, that you'll get them come out in a real time. But the suppliers, they both all of them have most of them have marketing teams that goes around that are trained in treating with the different pests, and so they will normally provide
Thank you very much for that answer. Do the growers know how to contact these individuals? Is that something that would help everyone to share, that a new grower doesn't know whom to contact?
Well, every community, every district is assigned to an extension officer. So there is always an extension officer of the Ministry of Agriculture that's assigned wherever you are. In a little nook and cranny of Jamaica, there's always an extension officer. So once you have that extension officer, they too go out into the field and do inspections and collect samples, and they would send it, as Andre says, to Bodos if they themselves are not able to give an in-field diagnosis based on what they're seeing. And then they pass it to the research station, which would diagnose and give you the results of that. In addition to the chemical companies themselves, the input suppliers, as Andre mentioned, they too provide the service. So the important contacts for everybody to have is the extension officers and the like High Pro, Nutrimix. It's not a lot of them. We have maybe 2 main suppliers. So those are the contact numbers that farmers would have access to on a day-to-day basis.
So that sounds like that system is similar to ours, that we have extension people. That is their job, is to work with growers to figure out what the problem truly is. So that is fantastic that you have the similar system. They are so useful that I encourage everyone to work with their extension people to identify what they think is the problem.
Jamaica is blessed to have a very good extension. Hola, señor. All right. Right. So we do have that at our disposal. Is there any other source that farm, and of course, farmer to farmer, not the farmer to farmer program that we represent, but farmers like to network and exchange among themselves when they have issues, and they try to solve among themselves as well. So if it's an issue that one farmer has overcome, farmers also get information. That's another source for them as well.
Are there organized meetings where farmers get to work with each other and look at each other's greenhouses?
Right, and there are also periodic trainings that are also held. I'm not sure, I'm not aware exactly what the Greenhouse Association does, but there's also a Greenhouse Association. I'm not sure how functional it is right now, but that association is a membership-based organization for greenhouse growers only. So that's also another avenue. Not many persons are members, so I don't think it's well utilized.
But
so that's more like the lobby group, Jeff. So more like
the farmers sharing to their fellow farmers is one of the best ways to transfer information of, hey, I've got this problem. What did you do last year when you had that problem? Farmers working together is an amazing sharing of information.
Always the best, because this usually coming from a place of experience, something that they have tried and have succeeded at. Yeah. Blanca Aguilar. Bianca, do you have a question? Stacy, you had a question? Somebody's hand is raised. I don't. All right, any more questions from the floor? All right, somebody's saying we at Tubolsky. Read that one, Mr. Sims.
So we at Tubolsky don't have an extension officer to report to. So
you'd have to explain what you mean, Denise. They
mean sometimes they in the rural areas, some of them they take a while to follow up, but we could check who's responsible for that area and get you a contact.
Right.
Denise.
And the difficulty with extension officers is one extension officer to 2,000 farmers. So,
yeah.
You know, unless sometimes if there is a disease outbreak or there is an issue that's affecting maybe 10 or more persons in a community, then sometimes it doesn't get immediate attention. So it's challenging. So that's why, as Jeff re-emphasized, having a good contact farmer, another farmer who has been doing this greenhouse production for some time, is always good to be networking with persons like that.
Yeah.
Right. So guys, please leave your names and numbers in the chat as well. So even here, you can begin to network among yourselves. Franklin is a grower, so I'm sure he can also provide some insight.
Yeah, Franklin. Mr. Clark, you have your greenhouse close to your house, right? You hearing? I think he has a greenhouse down in Brownstown, but he's with the Noranda group.
Okay, he's muted, and I don't know if he's speaking.
Do you have people who scout for other people? When I was just out of university, that was my job for a summer. Is I worked for 15 farmers, and every week I went to their farm fields and looked for insect and disease problems. So the university was training me in what to look for and how to work with the farmers once I found them. Is that a service that is available in Jamaica where you pay someone to come to your greenhouse for a half an hour just to walk through and looking for insects and diseases?
Not aware of anything like that here.
That may be something to consider if you have 50 farmers and each person contributes a small amount of money, then you have one individual who goes through everybody's greenhouses looking for problems. And if they see something, they can help to identify it and tell the grower they have a problem in that greenhouse. If the extension people do not have the ability to come when you need them.
With the risk in having one person going from greenhouse to greenhouse, because in the example we have here, a lot of our greenhouse growers are in clusters. So there may be 20 in one location, 20 in another location. Would there be any risk in having one person assigned per cluster who is responsible for that?
There's always risk in everything of life. And it depends on the cluster. If the farmers work together very well, then there is not so much risk. Part of being a field scout is the promise that I do not tell your secrets to your neighbor. And that is just part of being in business like that. Is we have the same with extension. I learn from my farmers, but I will never tell a production secret from one farm to the next. So that's always a risk. If you have one person going to all the farms, they can share what growers don't want to share. part of being a good insect scout or a disease scout is the scout has to practice the sanitation, so that if you get covered in an insect in one house, you must make sure that you are not bringing that insect to your neighbor's house that you are scouting. So that is all part of the training to be a good insect scout or disease scout, is how do I clean before going to the next location to not transfer a disease or an insect. So there are always risks, but sometimes the benefit is stronger.
Benefit outweighs the risk.
Yeah. I'm happy that our conversation is pretty much steering in line for the next topics, Jeff, in terms of maintaining a growing crop.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the persons who are on and who came on late. Ms. Johnson or Jeff could share, the next 2 sessions that we'll be having, what would be covered there.
I will check with Ms. Johnson, since I'm not sure what will be on the next topic.
For the next topic, or what was it again? I'm actually not in my email. You can bring it up in your email, Mr. Sim. But Louise Lawrence is saying that she does a lot of the scouting herself, Jeff. So for the insect scouts, it would really have to be the individual growers, because we don't have any system like that now where persons are trained to do scouting. Most times it's an individual managing their own greenhouse by themselves. So learning how to scout using the key that Jeff shared with us is a good starting point.
It is something to consider. What I have noticed is farmers get too busy doing other things in the greenhouse that they don't always remember that they should be scouting as they walk through the greenhouse. So that is why some of my growers want to pay somebody else, because they recognize they forget to do it themselves.
Interesting. All right.
Okay, great. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So for next session, March 11, we'll be doing general plant care. And I believe that this is something that we would have a whole lot of experience with already, and it would be a refresher for persons, some of the good practices when you're moving your seed from transplant into grow out, right? And then that would allow us, and I want persons to come with questions that would facilitate a discussion, because then the training will be in general, but if you have a specific question about, transplanting up to growing your crop, you can bring that next week. And the following week, which is the final one, would be, production and harvesting, how to manage your crop during that period. So we have 2 more sessions to go. You can invite persons. We're very sorry for the hiccup with the link connection this session, but it has been very informative. I particularly love the way that we can, as Jeff said, learn to be detective, and here we're ending on scouting. So that's a common thing that we need to always bear in mind as a greenhouse grower. So those are what I want to share, and thank you very much for coming on. And as Ms. Johnson is emphasizing, leave your number and name in the chat if you can, please, so we can send out the new link so that we don't have any challenge come next week with you joining on.
It's the same link. So this is the link for the remaining sessions.
Yes.
Shelly V?
I was just going to ask about the link, but as you just said it, because I have quite a few persons that I had invited. And I got so much messages. I was on another meeting that they can't connect. So now that you said that is the one for the remaining sessions, I'll just keep it and make sure that the persons get on time.
All right. Sorry about the hiccup there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nordian is giving you the tour today, Jeff, as we close. I don't think it's coconuts today. It looks like tomatoes or potatoes, Nordian.
That is our feel. A sweet potato. Is it
sweet pepper, callaloo, and down that side a lot of sweet potato and cucumbers. I reaped 150 pound cucumbers yesterday.
That's a nice clean field.
Yeah.
It's one of my farmers that I want them to get on, get connected, get information and so on. So I'll share with them.
Right, we had sent out the link early, but apparently it wasn't shared. So sorry, sorry, so sorry.
Yes,
so,
man.
so sorry about that.
Ms. Shelby, please ask all of your farmers to collect their questions for next week, and then we can have a very powerful question and answer. So if they were not able to ask questions today, please ask them to save them and ask them next week.
Yes.
Okay, sure, definitely.
Good point.
Okay.
Right, so please join early next week at 2 p.m. so that we can have a very good session. And it's important because, you know, we deal with pests and diseases, but the goal and aim in production is always to minimize and eliminate, right? So next week we'll delve into all of the good stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right, Jeff.
Send some nice warm weather to me, please.
It's out here. It's out here.
Thank you very much for all the questions people have asked today and for the conversation. It has been great fun.
Okay. Could you get on?
Thanks, Jeff, for coming. Thanks for coming. Coming from the Tubalski group, whatever you thought of innovative, we had a lot.
And thank you very much for the greenhouse tour.
Yeah.
Okay, all the best.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for the program. I look forward to.
All right.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jeff.
You're
Refresher
welcome.
course for all of us as farmers, greenhouse farmers.
All right, we'll see each other next week, same time.
Okay, Marsha.
All right, bye. Thank you for joining, guys. Please start sharing the link from early.
Okay.
All right then.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Jeff. We appreciate everything that you taught us today. A lot of it is refreshing, some of it is brand new to me, and I'm sure to others as well. So
Thank you very much for reading the comments to me so I know what to do. This way you make it very easy for me.
all right, take care everyone. Enjoy the rest of the
Thanks,
afternoon. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Jeff.
Yes.
We could connect if you want. We could set some time when in your schedule. So we could connect and discuss next week.
What day would work well for you, Mr. Sims?
I'm flexible.
I am also quite flexible. Do you have time open on Monday? Just
afternoon, yes.
Monday afternoon for you is Monday morning or lunchtime for me. That would be wonderful.
Okay, great. We could do 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock for you is 9 o'clock for me. That would be fine.
Awesome. All right then, Jeff.
So
Great.
will someone send me the Zoom link or do I just use this one?
I will send it to you.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Have a wonderful afternoon. I'm going
All
to
right.
log off.
Yes, bye-bye.
Enjoy the evening.
Try to log off.